I'll let you know.
We're good. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this regular meeting of the Town of Bristol Board of Finance to order, October 15th, 2024 at 7:02 in the Town Hall Meeting Room. First item on the agenda is the roll call to order.
We have all members present with the exception of Gary Bolak.
Okay, second item on the agenda, a public forum. Does anyone wish to speak? Seeing and hearing none, we're going to move on to item number 3A, approval of meeting minutes, August 20th, 2024, regular meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a first and a second on the motion to approve regular meeting minutes from August 20th, 2024. Any discussion? Right now, we're going to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 3B, September 12th, 2024, special meeting minutes. Right now, we're going to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 4, new business 4A, Finance Director's monthly report.
All right, I included the revenue and expenditure report for the current fiscal year, as well as the fund balance analysis. Still on track for both revenues and expenditures, nothing out of the ordinary yet, still pretty early in the year. Revenues were at $14,469,642.57. That is 34.20% of budget revenues. No concerns at this point. You'll see in the packet that the tuition revenue is looking like it's going to be favorable this year. So revenues right now are looking like they're going to be pretty good. Expenditures recorded date, we're at $11,903,307. That's 28.14% of budget expenditures. No concerns at this point. Still the one line item is the only thing that's over budget. Everything looks to be pretty much on track. No issues so far that I've come across. As far as fund balance, right now I'm projecting at the end of the year to be right around 20%. I have 20.01%, but that actually could be higher because I had done all these prior to receiving the report from Sean. So we're actually probably going to be higher than that. I'd say probably closer to 21% than 20% if everything else falls in line. If anyone has any questions, I would be happy to try and answer them.
Jim, my question,
Go ahead, sir.
did you take into account the 2% that they can keep it on the side as an emergency fund?
Correct. That's 2% of the expenditures. I assumed a zero fully expended budget for both of that.
Anyone else? Okay, we're going to then move on to 4B, updates from Superintendent of Bristol Public Schools. Sean McKenna.
Good evening. You should have two communications in your packet. The first is a letter to the chairman for September 4th, 2024. That details what we anticipate or are projecting to return to the town, which is $52,735.49. That was for fiscal year 2024. The second communication of October 10th, 2024 updates the Board of Finance on our enrollment based on that number that we have to submit to the state of Connecticut. As you can see, there has been a steady, healthy increase of new students into our district. And so you have the comparisons from 2021, 2022, 2023. And I also included, which Eric has referenced, update number 2 in the October 10th memo, the tuition enrollment and projected revenue for the school year 2024, 2025. That is subject to change with students withdrawing and adding throughout the school year, but it is looking very favorable. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
That's an additional 380,000. Am I correct? on that?
Approximately. at this
Approximately?
point in time, yes.
Okay. And just so everybody is aware that those monies go into the general fund. It's a normal course of business.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have a question. On your financial report, it looks like all these categories are just expense categories, is that correct?
This is the summary report.
Yeah.
Yes, we try to include what was expended, encumbered, total expenses. There's more of a detailed report that we include online. That's given to the board.
So on object number 500, there's abbreviations of trans, INS, commune, and tuition. What do each of those abbreviations mean?
Transportation, insurance, communication, and tuition.
And tuition would be tuition paid to other towns?
Correct.
Okay.
Transportation, just to be clear, we pay for the bus, which is contracted, and we also have to pay for the gasoline for the fuel.
So your budgeted expenses were $30,782,465. And the total expenditures came out to $32,691,931.36, which represents 6.2% over the budget.
So that, what is factored into that is what we call the excess cost, which is a grant that we get for the state of Connecticut for funds to help us offset special education costs. So it's roughly, Tom, I don't know the exact figure. We estimate every year, so for fiscal 2024, we estimated $700,000. That actually came in, I'm gonna have to defer to Eric and Deb to help me. I think it came into 832.
So I think it was
Does
somewhere.
that make sense? Like it's about 132,000, so it came in over what we projected. What Eric and Deb do is they net it against the Board of Ed budget. So
Scott,
that's why it seems higher.
can I say something?
Absolutely.
Tom, if you look at the middle, box, you can see the revenue is 1.9 million. So the net between the two ends up being a little under budget, 52,000. So that revenue includes the excess cost plus the
That's my
special
question. I
service.
don't know where that revenue was coming from. So that's from the,
That's from excess costs and for us, the special services that the other districts pay us for like, one-to-ones
Educators.
with their students.
Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome.
And those monies are always directly netted against the cost of that budget, and special services monies.
It's a reimbursement.
Right, the reimbursement, yes. Any other questions? Okay, then we are going to move on to 4C. Discussion and possible action on fiscal year 25 budget transfer requested by Recreation Youth Family Service Director.
Hi,
I'll give you the floor, Ryan.
how you guys doing? So somebody told me a very nice thing about transfer, so I'm gonna try it. Joe and Tom, of course, came to this, you did send her a couple of times, but, for this transfer, what we're requesting is, I'll just state the request out first. The transfer $700 from the field trip line item to the tech maintenance line item. So the reason for that, we have a software called Jarvis. Jarvis was great for years. What happened the last year and a half, it got bought out. So I just find that things have been going a little bit wonky. Finance can tell you kind of the same thing. Karen works with it all the time. And over the last couple of months, it's getting worse to the point, like, it's just not working. And like, for example, for youth basketball, 50-something applicants put in their jersey size, but the software didn't take it. So I had to physically text 50 families saying, hey, what's your kid's jersey size? It's just little things like that. It's like death by paper cuts. It's all these things going wrong. So for a while, I've been trying to get new software and figure out what the best bet is. And my rec came up with, what we do is all the directors in this, our region meet once a month. And I asked them, like, what do you suggest? And my rec, which is like a mom and pop type company, they're out of New Hampshire. They're at all the different shows around the area. And I found a lot of like East Line, Groton, New London, Ledger, they all highly recommend it. So and we did the, walkthrough with them. They showed us what it offers. It blows away Jarvis. I mean, it has a case management application that we could definitely use what we do at the youth center that Jarvis didn't have. Overall, what we're trying to do is it would be usually, I'll give you some numbers here, but usually it's, from July 1st on, we'd be paying the fee, which is just the normal fee, which is higher than what it is now, but I'll talk about it now. But what we're trying to do is, when you start new software, there's a rollover process. You have to start getting people into the software, getting used to it, and then you start building programs through that software. And in a year's time, you're trying to convert everybody that was on the original software, so there's over 2,000 something people signed up on this new like they're transferring to the new software. So it's called a boot up phase. So what we're trying to do is start that phase in February and then it'd go live in April. So what that means is they have trainers, they walk you through the whole process, how to use it, how to build it. The cool thing about it has a website already built into it. So I can actually get rid of our website that we currently pay for twice a year. And all the fees that go with that. So the transfer that I'm asking for is basically getting us up to July 1st to start using the software, to start enrolling. We're starting a new spring break camp that's new. We're waiting. What's going to happen is when that's closer, I'm going to come to you guys and do this transfer request for that. Right now, we're trying to hire staff, which is honestly iffy because it's spring break and these are teenagers. So we're trying to see where we're at there before I ask for that. But this new software, do the spring break camp, adult basketball, the color run, we're gonna try to run at the school. I'm trying to work with the PTOs and figure out a good time to request all that information. Summer camp, youth center, and after school and the school programs would be using this new my rec phase up to July 1st. So what that $700 does is gets us the start in February 1st. Usually the fee would be $1,016.25. But because I told them I have a budget of $700, they're gonna do it for the $700 phase. But again, July 1st, we would start with the new MyRec. Now for that, after July 1st, with the new budget coming up, the difference in cost is $990. But then you'd subtract what we pay for website costs, is roughly about 300. So that's the difference. That's a new budget conversation, but I'm just trying to get up to that point and kind of phase out Jarvis, in steps. Because everything we do, I can't just turn key and switch over right away because people have to be used to the new product.
Does this software have the ability to import data from your old program? Do you know?
Not from another company. So it'd be a company to company.
Mhm.
The only data that it can import is I can give it the addresses for Grizzle residents. They can import it so they know the difference between a Lisbon and a Grizzle when it comes to pricing.
Mhm.
That's about it though.
It sounds like it's a lot of data entry.
It's a lot. And it's honestly getting used to something new. And building it, of course, which is the thing I can do. It usually takes 8 weeks, they say, for training for somebody who has no tech background. With what I showed, what we have, he said by a week and a half, if not 2 weeks. So we can implement it soon. But again, this is February 1st, so I'm trying to plan for that. Because we'd have to gently phase things out of Jarvis and start phasing them into Lyra.
So, Jarvis versus this new MyRec, Jarvis you own?
No,
Or is
it's
it-
online,
Is it a software as a service model where you have an annual renewal fee?
correct,
Jarvis is also,
yeah, yep,
so what did you call it, MyRec?
myrec.com.
That's $900 more than Jarvis's
It is.
annually? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is, it just has so many more, the capacity of it is so much better. But again, a lot of people at the table that I was with, at the directors meeting, they used Jarvis in the past and they've been phasing out over the last couple of years. I didn't know about the whole sellout thing until they told me, like, that's what's happening.
Ryan, do you have a price on there for the MyRec? Because I didn't think it was 900. I thought it was less than that.
So the one that we'd have to go to is $4,065.
Because I thought we paid like 3,700 for Jarvis this year.
Could be. I'm sorry, I pulled it from my documents.
Because when I looked at the two,
Yeah,
I didn't think it was that much of a difference. I thought it was a few $100.
okay,
Because I looked at what we're paying now.
yeah. That's better news. Okay.
Sounds to me like he's going to continue to have problems if he stays with Jarvis. He's gonna have to, transfer to another software program. And if this is recommended by other directors who have already made that transition, it makes sense to do it during the off season. So I'd like to make a motion to approve his request.
Okay, and that transfer is coming from where to where?
Field trip expenses, which is line item 5217. To technology maintenance, which is 5407, both within the Department 5301, the rec.
And that's in my motion too.
Okay, perfect. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Is there any discussion? We're gonna vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
4D, discussion of possible action on fiscal year 25-26 budget. Just a couple of things. One, the superintendent and I, have had,
Thank you.
some conversation, with regard to timing of their budget this year. There was a time when we used to receive the Board of Education budget, I'll say significantly earlier than we receive it now. I can remember back the first few years on the board, we would receive the budget and have a presentation by the superintendent, typically in the last week of February. Obviously, we all know that the Board of Ed budget is the most comprehensive budget. And it takes a lot more time to digest. So I had requested that we try to get back to that model of trying to get us the budget somewhere in the second-ish week, I'll call it, of February, and look for a proposal towards the end of February. That way we have plenty of time to be able to digest it, plenty of time to be able to go back and have additional conversations, which is something that in recent years, we really haven't had that ability to have because of timing and the tight timelines. We have, I think, as a board here, this board, we've kind of transitioned a little bit in the last year to really a little bit more of a collaborative process, in trying to engage and involve everybody in the process as we kind of, wade through the weeds and figure out where we want to end up. So certainly I think the more time that we have to have those conversations, the better off that we are on that. So just wanted to kind of bring everybody up to speed on that. The second half of this item here is typically every year. When I've been chair, I've tried to prompt everybody to provide some guidance on where we are looking or hoping to land with the budget so that they have an idea kind of where they need to be. There are years when we have provided that guidance and they've come in, close, maybe not at it, maybe higher. But they've made every attempt to get to where we have, requested that they be. There have been some years where we, as a board, for whatever reason, have, declined to provide that guidance. In those years, get budgets back that are, somewhere around 6% or 7%. And the response was, well, you didn't give us any guidance, so we just gave you a budget based on what we felt we needed to be. So it does certainly have some benefit. Obviously, I think we all know and we all understand, all stakeholders in this, that guidance is just that. It's not the be all end all. That's a starting point. That's not necessarily a finishing point, but that helps us to get kind of closer. Could the numbers go up? They could. This is one of those years where it's a biennial budget and we'd have no idea where the state's gonna land. So that's gonna kind of drag things out. Could we get less revenue? We could. Could we get more revenue? Unlikely, but I guess we could. So I think we need to really kind of maybe talk this through on where do we want to see kind of everybody land on a starting point for for an increase. Is it 5%? Is it 2%? Is it 3%? At the end of the day, they're more in tune and listening to us and what we're looking for and our thoughts, because it's going to help to kind of move things along as we get further in the process. So, is there anyone here that would like to begin? So Eric, can you just confirm my math? We look at just the Board of Ed budget, and we look at just the general government budget, no debt service, no capital. I'll make an assumption in my example that capital is flat funded.
Yep.
If we did a 2.5 increase across the board, that's about 940,000, 944. Is my number right?
Sounds about ballpark, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And that's about $1 million.
just over $1 million, right? 944.
Yeah, just over.
So,
I think 1 mill's around right now, 916,000.
so I guess I would be of the opinion that I would be of the opinion that maybe we request everybody to try to hit 3%, knowing that that number is more than likely going to change. We're certainly not going to be able to put forth a $1.25 million or $1.5 million rate, but I think that at some point you need to kind of be somewhat realistic as a starting point, and then kind of work through the aches and pains as we go. So my thought would be maybe we set the beginning part of this at 3%, and then we begin to tweak it from there. That's just my opinion, and I would like to hear from everybody else. And
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like for us to target actually 2%. I'd like to see us come in under $1 million. I think that psychologically with the voters, anything over $1 million then becomes, we've been lucky in the last few years, getting the vote to pass some of the mill increases. But I'd really like to have the mill increase under $1 million. We can always tweak it, as you say, you know, as far as special situations, that may be a 1 year, a one-off and get back into the groove, but overall, I think 3% is a little high. I'd like it closer to 2%.
Okay,
Or-
for where they come in at initially?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, I would have to disagree with that. I would have to say, what's the recent rate of inflation? Is it the 3?
They just came out with what, 2.4 or 2.7?
That's what it's down to now, the rate of inflation, right?
Mhm.
Was
That's
still
what it
around
was.
20% over the last 4 years. I would agree with a minimum of 3 come in at, because if we start at 2, you know, there's gonna be further cuts. So you're not gonna end at 2. And with us not having any mill rate increases for a number of years prior to, I just don't want to find ourselves on the short end. Because we gotta face it, I mean, salaries are going up, rates of insurance, all the rates for everything is going up. At least 2.5 to 3% a year at this point. So if we were to come in under that, then they're actually losing money. They're not even staying the same. Their money's not worth the same as it was before. And I think that's same for all budgets. I mean, just to keep the status quo, you need to be in line with what inflation is.
Mark?
Well, I think that, you know, a 3% as a starting point with, an eye towards, you know, lowering it, hopefully, is a good place to start. I think inflation pressures plus, you know, other things tend to push things up. And Ralph's point is well taken that everything is rising regardless of inflation, you know, that's not even, insurance rises with no inflation, inflation has nothing to do with it. So I think we have to keep that in mind. But I think having a guideline saying this is where we're prepared to be gives them an idea as to what they should shoot for, to be reasonable.
You have an opinion on where you?
No,
think
I
we need to be?
comment after mine.
Oh.
That's fine, I mean. You may have.
Thank you, sir. I just wanna make sure you guys, just to make things clear for newer people. Just because expenses go up 3% doesn't mean the mill rate will go up 3%. Because one big caveat this year with the grand list, as of October 1st, that's when the grand list goes. They're changing the way they value motor vehicles. No one knows how that's gonna affect us yet. We won't know until the grand list is done. So that could have a swing one way or the other. So if the grand list goes down, the mill rate could go up. If it goes up, it could go down. So just something to keep in mind that 3% doesn't necessarily mean a 3%
Right.
tax increase.
No.
Right.
But the whole thing with the motor vehicles, nobody has a clue how that's gonna affect the grand list.
They haven't come out with anything yet.
No, I checked with the assessor last week, and even though it's as of October 1st, they haven't supplied the values or anything yet.
What percentage of our revenue to the town is due to motor vehicle taxes?
I'd have to look back at the grand list. Not a ton, but it's mostly real estate, but it still could have an effect.
Not a ton?
I only have the increase from the Board of Education, so there was a 3.44% increase last year. And majority of that is due to contractual obligations. So I would lean towards a 3%.
It can be anywhere in there, I guess, because I know we're not talking about it, but the obligations is what's scaring me in the future. But I know with all the work we did last year with the cutting and some of it may have been deep and painful. But I could be in between that 2 or 3. I mean, I guess maybe a little bit more towards the 3 since the Board of Ed was at 3.4, like Tom just said, so maybe find it very painful and difficult to come in at 2. So I guess I would start around that 3.
Okay. Well, thank you. There's your rough guidance, I guess.
Can you recap where we are as far as our debt coverage, what's rolling on, what's rolling off?
The only new payments we're gonna have next year is depending on when the sewer gets bonded or we close on the loan, that would be the only one that would add, and that wouldn't be a whole heck of a lot. Probably 100,000, somewhere around there.
We have 2 more years
The high
left
school roof.
on the high school roof.
Yeah.
And then that comes off, and how much is that?
That's just over 100,000 a year.
Anything within the next few years that's gonna be rolling off, or are we?
Now, the big one is the school projects, but I believe that is FY 2030, somewhere in there, 30 or 31.
I've got, September 15th, 29.
There's a 20, so FY 30, yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to 4E, discussion and possible action on setting 2025 meeting dates. Everybody still good with the 3rd Tuesday of the month?
Yep.
Okay. The other question that I have then is, what kind of interest do we have in changing our time and moving it up from our 7 PM start time to perhaps a 6 PM start time? Or a 6:30 start time, depending on, and if it's a hardship for one person, then we'll go a little later, but I'd like to try to move it up earlier if we can. 6 would certainly be my vote, but I understand that everybody has, work obligations and whatnot, so, what's the consensus?
I can, 6 is tight for me.
Okay.
But 6:30 is very doable.
Either one is fine.
6:30.
Either one.
6, if not 7.
Not 6:30?
6:30, no good for me, no. I don't mind getting here earlier than 6 if we had to, but 7 is okay, 6 would be good too. But it's the consensus of the board, I will try to abide by what everybody else would like.
If the consensus is 6, I can do 6.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And 6 was going to work for everyone else? Some? Or you're good with 6?
I can make it work.
Okay, Gail, you sure?
Mhm.
Okay. Somebody like to make a motion?
Make a motion that the time of our regular meetings of the Board of Finance, commencing January 2025, start at 6 PM. Town Hall Meeting Room,
For the 3rd Tuesday of the month.
3rd Tuesday of the month.
We were first, do we have a second? Any discussion? And then we're gonna vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, 4F, discussion of possible action on adopting volunteer firefighter retention policy. Everybody should have a copy of that policy. Just a real quick history and Matt jump in. Where you think we need to. We really started this as a result of an ask by one of the fire departments that we look at whether or not we felt that the stipends as they are currently working now should be changed. So that's really where we started. We kind of recognized at the same time that we were looking at that it didn't necessarily 100% fall within our purview. It's more within the selectmen's purview. I had a conversation with the first selectman, and kind of gave her some of that background and our feeling as well. She indicated that she was comfortable with our subcommittee, that process kind of working where it was, and if we felt it needed to change, that they would take that into consideration and make whatever decision needed to be made. If we felt that it was good, that they would also be okay with that. We went ahead, we looked at a lot of the data, and we felt that the system did not need to change at this point. We felt that it was important that both departments fall under the same methodology of receiving retention payments. We felt that that was extremely important. We do recognize that both departments aren't necessarily 100% like kind. There are differences with Jewett City, then there are differences with Griswold, and some are good and some are not so good. But it's kind of like, if there's something we found with Jewett City, we found that there was the inverse with Griswold. If there was something that was bad on the Griswold side, that, and we're talking as far as, time and calls and whatnot, that the inverse was true in Jewett City. So when we looked at everything and all the data, we felt that, it really balanced itself out. During that process, we came to the realization that there was no formal policy drafted that talked about how it worked. What were the requirements for you to be eligible for, retention stipends? What were the guidelines? What was the procedure that needed to be followed so that it could be properly documented? It could then be backed up and it could be verified by, fire company officers. So that we had the proper paperwork also to then be able to supply the auditors if and when they decided that they wanted to take a look at those funds. So basically, all we really did was, close the loop on all of that, put that down on paper. That it was a collaborative process with Matt and myself, Eric, the finance director, Lou D'Amico, chief of Jewett City, Tom Hollow, chief of Griswold, and then at the tail end, also Steve Merchant, deputy chief of Griswold. Everybody was 100% on board with the policy as it's written. There were no issues. There is a provision in here that kind of reverts back to the selectmen, and it just speaks to, at budget time, that the selectmen are going to meet with the chiefs and determine whether or not there need to be any changes, and if there are any changes, that falls under, your purview. And that's pretty much it. Well, if there are any questions, Matt, did I miss anything?
No, I think you got it all. I just reiterate that the buy-in from the chiefs was very good and it was collaborative, so it was good meetings.
So if there are no questions, I would entertain a motion to, I guess before that, the effective date of this policy would begin on January 1st of 2025. And the reason for that is because there is an EMS reporting program that both fire departments have. And that's a requirement, that both fire departments utilize the same program. They record their calls, and they record personnel the exact same way, and that they provide certain reports from that program on a monthly basis. So there's a little bit of a 100% phase in, I guess I would say, that there's a difference in how both fire departments were currently utilizing it. And they're aware of the expectation moving forward, which is why the effective date is on January 1st. So if there are no questions,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So what is an ENN?
that is currently the program that they use for their EMS reporting. Which I think is why it says our current program afterwards in the event that they change programs.
Do they feel comfortable that they'll be able to phase it in by January?
Yeah, there
expect any
was,
hiccups or
there were
anything?
there were no issues or concerns with that. They're utilizing it now. They're just not Grizzle, I don't think is utilizing necessarily to the full extent that Jewett City is utilizing it. So it's just really kind of getting from, I don't know, 90% to 100% or whatever. It didn't seem like there was much of a hurdle for them to get to where it needed to be.
And the stipends run calendar year, so it makes sense to just start it with the new year.
Oh, so the stipends don't run budget?
No, they
Yeah.
go calendar year.
I'll make a motion to approve the volunteer firefighter retention stipend policy as presented and as agreed upon by the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and the two fire departments.
Well, it has not been agreed
Oh,
to
it
by
hasn't
the
been.
Board of Selectmen because it's a Board of Finance policy. It's a finance policy
Okay.
only.
I'll retract that piece,
Okay.
but motion to approve.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we're gonna vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion
I
carries.
confused myself from the vote.
Thank you. Motion carries.
So does that now go to the Board of Selectmen for approval or,
I don't think it has to because it's strictly a finance policy
Right.
only.
okay,
The Board
Yeah.
of Selectmen, when they do the budget process, that's when they'll approve the stipend amounts.
I see.
Okay, 4G, discussion of possible action on adopting capital planning policy. Gail, do you want to speak to?
I can speak to that, but I'd like to make sure that I ask Rob and Jim to chime in as well. The one thing that I want to make sure that we discuss, though, that we haven't had as a deadline before. Jim, as the worker bee on the capital committee for so many years, has said that, they'd like to set a deadline for different departments' presentations and asks. And every year there's some departments that are stragglers, which makes it difficult for their department to then get something to us. And as you were speaking about, accelerating the Board of Ed presentation, the capital budget is also a budget that needs scrutiny, not just once, but on 2 or 3 occasions. And we do want to give the committee the courtesy that if we are looking to cut something, we have enough time to send it back to them so that they can suggest where they want to make the cuts rather than have something cut that they felt was a priority. So, that being said, I think it's really important, and Rob, you would probably feel the same way, that there be a deadline, that if a department doesn't get their ask into the capital committee by a certain date, then that project just isn't considered for that budget year. Jim has said that he'd love to have everything in September. We're way past September now, but he said on some years he doesn't get anything until January or February. So I'd like to ask everyone on the Board of Finance if they're comfortable and get their feedback on making a December 1st deadline this year. So that we can at least get halfway there for Jim to be able to put together his presentation in a timely manner, and we can then turn it around for him. So that's one piece.
So currently, is there language in there on the September? I do remember seeing something in there on September. Is that the language?
I'm
There is on
hoping,
that letters.
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
okay.
under letter C, yeah. So we do want to have that deadline, and we want to make sure that all the departments understand that it's not a moving target, it's a real target. The rest of the capital planning policy in front of you, I want to make certain that everyone understands that the policy outlines the guidance for the planning and coordinating. It isn't hard and fast, but it's very strong guidance. Rob was concerned that if there wasn't some teeth in it, then it's not really gonna help us trim down and zero in on projects that we want to include and prioritize. I think most of the pieces that are in the policy summary have been created by the research and drafting of Eric. Thank you so much, Eric, for putting this together. We did tweak on page 2 some of the capital financing. We were looking at the debt usage, short-term debt, 10 years, long-term debt. And we were also looking at, on page 1, that part of the capital project definition means that the project has to have a useful life of at least 5 years. The evaluation of capital projects, we still believe should rest with the capital committee. And they present their evaluation to the Board of Finance. And we do want to give everyone enough time so that if we don't agree, we can signal that to the committee and they can go back and do their adjustments. Is there anything else that you think we should, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, the 4 pages that we have here. Eric, do you have any other key points that you think we need to hit?
No, I mean, the biggest thing is the definition, because we've always gone back and forth between, is it 7,500, there's a 10,000, nothing has ever been set in stone, so that's the biggest thing. Is now it's gonna be 10,000 is what the members of the subcommittee agreed that they wanted to do. And again, that's for an individual item. But sometimes there are groups of items, such as, like, they had all the smart board replacements, where an individual item may not be 10,000, but as a aggregate, it's gonna be a big enough hit to their operating budget that it's tough to pay it out of there, so for the groups of items, the total cost should exceed the following. So for general government and Board of Ed, it's 0.5% of their operating budget. And for the fire departments, it's 20% of their operating budget, because with them, 0.5 is not very much.
Right.
But like we just had the air pack replacement, which as an individual item would be under the 10,000. But it ended up being, they funded $35,000 worth, which, I mean, if their operating budget's 113,000, that would decimate their budget, so. For them, I did 20%, which would be 23,000. So I felt that was a reasonable number, but those are really the big items to really think about.
And looking at that, just for clarification, like the Board of Ed with this year's budget, it would come out to anything over 159.2.
Right,
And then
and for
for
the
the general
general
government, it
government
was
operating
30,000.
budget, it's about 30,000.
So you're buying groups of things that exceed that,
So like last year with the,
the laptops.
yeah,
Wouldn't have
Chromebooks,
been-
whatever, that would not have
That
met
would have
the
not met the
threshold,
threshold,
okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
And that's aggregate on an individual project, not a
Right.
sum of multiple individual projects.
Correct.
Okay. I have a couple of, I'm sorry.
I just didn't know whether Jim Barney wanted to offer.
Well, I want to thank you, Gail, for the excellent presentation you just gave. The only thing that was, I made a suggestion and Eric said it was incorporated, that moving forward after this year, that we would like, if we're gonna have something ready for discussion in September, I'd like to see the deadline to be August 15th or thereabouts. So it gives us some time to put the plan together and then discuss it. I don't know what I don't know. what
And I
that
think he
date-
has that here.
Yes, it's in the policy, August 15th.
I mean, August 15th.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, just this year, we can't do August
Right.
15th, so.
I would just, Scott, I don't know if you wanna make sure that's okay with the board. Ed.
Well,
I
that's
know
kind of
they-
where I was, that's kind of where I was just gonna go. Was
I don't know.
anybody from the
I don't
board,
know if 1 month later would be more.
Was-
feasible.
was anybody on the Board of Ed involved in this process? No, okay. So that would be my first question, I guess, August 15th or September 1. What realistically, what's the earliest realistically that you could come up with a capital?
So we just
Plan.
submitted a plan, there's a meeting, I believe Thursday evening.
Right,
So we submitted it, for what it's worth. We try to get cost estimates from vendors.
Yeah.
So that we're not just shooting a number out there. It's tough to get a cost estimate a year out. That's the only thing I would say. I mean, I get it and I appreciate all the work that everybody's done. It's almost like you have to have a cost estimate and then I'd have to like work with Deb and Eric and add 5 or, I don't know, a percentage, because it's not a real, it's a number in August or something that goes into effect July the following year.
Is August reasonable or realistic for you, or is?
No.
10-1,
September-
10-1
the timeline
better?
we
I
have
mean-
now, we have to do September, that's fine. I mean, August is a time when there's just a lot of folks on my cabinet that are on vacation.
Is October 1st?
That's
Deadline, is
doable.
that a better or more doable, more realistic?
Yes.
I don't want to take anything away from what.
No,
you
no.
guys have all done,
Well,
because I,
Anything
this
we
is
do
this
is
is a
far
daunting
better than
task,
Jim
so,
entertaining new proposals in January.
okay,
That's not fair to his
right.
committee.
Make,
Man, I would think if we're not gonna have data until October, even the 1st, that in my experience, there's no point even having a meeting in September. Because we just won't have enough to work with, because the school and public works is the 2 major things, the rest of them
right,
are in the noise level relatively, so.
I guess if it was, you know, a 4 or 6 week difference and they had a more accurate representation on what their capital needs are going to be, it would make sense to wait those, you know, those 6 weeks and then go ahead and then begin to start prioritizing all of those.
Yeah, it just-
You know,
it just
accordingly.
It just relays what we present to the finance board.
Right, so that was my other, I guess that was my other question. It goes to the selectmen before, and it has to be approved by the selectmen before it comes to us. Is that, I guess, a realistic timeline for the Board of Selectmen? So if you were to present at our first meeting in January, which is the third Tuesday, is that enough time for you to do what you need to do on the budget side, Eric, and then you to have enough of those preliminary budget meetings to then say, yeah, this is good, we're ready to send it to, you know, the Board of Finance, or do you need more? Do you need more time?
Be fine, Eric.
Yeah, the selectmen typically start meeting actually for the budget, the end of January,
Okay,
so. So I mean, I think you would be ready to present to the selectmen, but not Board of Finance till February.
If we start, we have our first meeting in the third weekend of October. That's kind of just pulling stuff together. And then in December, we'd have the first really go around.
November.
Yeah, November, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We'd have the first real go around with it. And then probably finalize it in December, go to the Board of Selectmen for the January meeting, and then present to the Finance Board in February. And then if it comes back to us, we look at it in March and get it back to you in April. Now, does that fit your schedule and
Cause we have extra meetings those months.
Yeah.
So sometimes a second or third presentation from you doesn't have to wait a full month. It can
Right.
be with a couple weeks.
right,
it's just in the past, we've got dribs and drabs. Okay, and it's just well, Tom's on that board and Gary's on it. You're on the finance, on the capital improvement board. And so it's just a waste of our time because we can't really act on the whole thing and see what the big picture is.
Right.
The schedule you just laid out, if that works for you, I think it can work for us.
So Scott, I would recommend changing August 15th to October 1st for their October meeting, because that'll still give them a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Before their meeting, they'll get over. Does that work for you, Sean? October 1st?
Yeah, may I ask a question?
go ahead, Sean.
When is this policy going into effect? Because we just had.
Not this year.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You missed it, you're not.
As far as
Well, except for the, and
Go ahead.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman, but what I envisioned was except for the deadline, the policy would go into effect now.
With the exception of saying we'll give to, was it 12/1? Was that your?
Yeah,
your-
12/1.
this year.
So we would have a 12/1 deadline this year. We would have a deadline.
Yeah.
It's just not October 1st,
But the
but the meat and
the
potatoes
Potatoes
here.
of this policy would be enacted and adopted once we.
mhm.
Okay.
Right.
The only other thing that I saw that I guess concerns me, is, the last, two sentences under section C of evaluation of capital projects. If the Board of Finance seeks to reduce the capital budget, they will instruct the Capital Improvement Committee to revise the plan by the stated dollar amount requested, provided there are no time constraints, and the board agrees. Ultimately, the Board of Finance has purview over the capital budget, but understands the work of the Capital Improvement Committee puts into their recommended capital budget. My only concern with that is that we are the only board that has the statutory authority to add or remove dollars and cents from any budget during the budget process. We are the financial authority and the sole financial authority that we have had in agreement and recognition of all of the time and effort and hard work that the capital committee puts in throughout the entire course of the year to try to allow them the latitude or the leeway to be able to reprioritize things. I don't think that it would be wise if we were to have a policy that does not provide the Board of Finance to work within its own statutory authority. And don't ask me for examples because I'm not a what if guy. But there could be a situation where we are diametrically opposed to where capital is going on something and we need to make a cut or we want to add something into that particular budget. Yet this verbiage here would put us in violation of our own financial policy by doing so. So I just think that there needs to be something in there, and I don't know how it would be reworded, but I think in a normal course of business, I think that that's 100% reasonable, and I think that that should be kind of the standard practice. But if for some reason a member and then a number of members decide that they need to want to look at something and make a cut or make an ad, that they have that ability to be the final say or the final word in that.
I have some language while we've been talking.
Okay.
Can I make a proposal?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, the sentence that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, starts in the middle of line 6 in the second paragraph under C. If the Board of Finance seeks to reduce the capital budget, they will instruct the Capital Improvement Committee to propose revisions to the plan by the stated amount requested, provided there are no time constraints. Well, I'm just gonna requested and the time constraints. Because that suggests that the Board of Finance can't ask for that revision if there are time constraints. And then the next sentence would be notwithstanding the request to the Capital Committee, the Board of Finance has final decision on the inclusion, exclusion, and or revision of any project in the capital budget.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, Rob? I think that cleans that up. I mean, I don't want to take away anything from them, but I just want to make sure that we didn't limit ourselves by policy.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
that sounds fine to me. The only reason I asked to have that put in there is because this finance board has been very flexible. We may in the future get a finance board that is not. So that was the reason for doing that.
Right.
And what Gail has just said sounds fine to me.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
I would hope with this policy, like, only because we've worked on our plan already, it's pretty comprehensive.
Mhm.
And just looking at it right now, there's, for instance, the smart board that doesn't meet the 0.5% threshold. I would hope there would be some understanding easing into it, not having the policy in front of me prior, so I could work with the Board of Ed. There would be some understanding that we're not, everything's not gonna be perfect in our plan, which I already submitted to Eric on Friday.
Okay.
Can I speak to that?
Absolutely.
We sort of went back and forth on that discussion and with my other discussions I've had with Jim. Remember that the very first paragraph of the policy says that it's for guidance.
Okay, that's
So
awesome. I
it's
just haven't
not,
seen it
so it's not
hard and
set in
fast.
stone. And certainly, if you have, say, a smart board replacement plan that's bifurcated or you put it into 3 years, probably when you look at replacing all the smart boards in all the schools, maybe it comes up close to the number that
does.
you're talking about.
I
So,
appreciate
so, if your proposal, brings that point forward, that this is a portion of something that would be within the percentage, then. Um,
Everybody understands that, everybody's good with that, but I mean, it's a little fluid, I guess, in year one.
Well, it was, this was the point of contention, because when you have a policy that is not firm
Mhm.
and is up to make exceptions, there's no line for exceptions.
Right.
But ultimately, the group wanted to have it so as guidance as opposed to a policy.
Okay.
Can we change the title to capital planning guidance? Cause I see the word policy and it's like, you must or shall, although I don't see the words must or shall in any of this going.
It's my contention was if it's just gonna be guidance, then we haven't changed anything.
I would almost rather see something appear maybe in the motion. If we were to do a motion to adopt, we would have to do a motion to adopt. To include the changes, as discussed. With special consideration of, the 12-1 timeline and, I'll call it capital projects in transit based on when they were submitted versus when the policy was adopted. Because that truly is the case, that we're adopting a policy, but there are capital projects that are currently in transit that would be adversely affected if everything rolled under this. And right now, maybe, I don't know, just a thought. Because I think you're right, Rob. I think you do want it to say policy. Otherwise, where are the teeth? And this is what we're expecting people to, to follow. Then it takes that, 10-1 date and says, you can make it, 11-1 or 10-15 or. So what do we want to do?
I will make a motion to approve the capital planning policy. Hopefully, I'm gonna get all this right. With the revisions discussed. Current year, December 1st. And also to include, possible, how do I say it? Some possible revisions for some capital budgets that were already submitted prior to this policy.
With the 12-1 and those submissions
Correct,
to only be considered for this current upcoming fiscal year.
correct, yes.
Yeah, I jotted down, under C, all requests for capital items must be presented to the finance director by October 1st of the current year, except in 2024, that deadline shall be December 1st, 2024.
Correct.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
And you've included the other edits that we talked about earlier.
Revisions discussed, yes.
I'll make that second and I'll give my notes to Eric.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Do we have any other discussion? Here now, we're gonna vote all in favor.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 5, old business. A, discussion of possible action on funding protective glass and tax assessor offices. Well, tag you're it, Eric.
This was tabled last meeting. I haven't received anything further from Martin. I know he's looking at more prices, but I haven't received anything, so I think it's just gonna have to be tabled again.
Motion on the table.
Okay, first
I'll
and second.
second it, but I do want to offer something on discussion.
Okay,
I've been in a lot of town halls recently because, you know, the real estate market is so crazy and I'm reporting and researching and whatnot. I'm gonna tell you, most town halls have some protective glass at these counter areas. And I guess I wasn't noticing that before until I started looking for it. So I really would ask Eric to please ask Martin to get his numbers in because most of our neighboring towns are doing this already.
all right, any other discussion,
Mr. Chairman,
sir?
we did discuss this, approve this, and I think in the discussion of just due diligence, we just wanted a second quote, right? Just something was that all that was waiting and this was approved, basically.
It was approved contingent on a second.
That was it though, right? That's all that's holding this
To a
up.
certain dollar amount. otherwise.
We approved the dollar amount, we did, but we were just looking to get another quote just for due diligence for the taxpayer, just to make sure.
We did, and then I think that there was some discussion about type of glass, correct? Film, whether they were gonna go with the film over the glass, because the original quote did not include the film. But then there was gonna be some additional, consideration on whether it was going to include the film or whether it was going to be an upgrade to the glass to a bullet resistant glass,
Yeah, I
correct?
think at first it was just gonna be not bullet resistant and didn't have the film. So that's when it was discussed, no, it should be either or.
Well, the shatter.
And it was gonna be more than the original amount.
Right.
That was approved.
All right, yeah, we voted to 3/8 tempered glass at the price of $6,500, so that's what it was left.
Yeah, cause then there were discussion on that glass to add the film,
Okay,
and he was gonna get a price
so
on
that would be
that.
an additional,
Yeah,
okay.
We have not voted on that, have we? I think did we vote on that?
We voted on it
We
and
did vote
approved
on
it
it?
contingent on,
No, did we vote on the tabling?
No.
No, we didn't.
Oh,
vote. We were
table,
discussing,
no,
right?
no.
I'm like, man.
no, we didn't. No,
Sorry about that.
that was the discussion after the
No,
second.
that's. Just trying to keep track of everything. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of tabling?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. 5B, update and discussion on bonding projects.
sewer project, we met with them last week just for our monthly update. All the pipe is in the ground. They were saying they had one more lateral to go across, which was supposed to be done this week. I don't know if it has been. And after that, all the piping is done. The only thing left is the pump station. So no, nothing big happened during the project for change orders, so that was a good thing. Now we're just working on getting the pump station. We're gonna try and get the concrete in before winter comes for the housing, but everything went pretty smooth. with the sewer. For the water, the bid for the water main was awarded today. So they're hoping to actually start on that this year and finish in the spring. So that's in motion. The other bid will be going out shortly for the water tower. And then everything should be done by the end of next year and up and running. That's the goal.
Right.
Any questions?
Is there a time frame next year? I mean, is it July, is it December, just rough?
I would estimate toward the end of the year.
Okay.
Probably fall.
Okay, 5C update from Recreation Budget Subcommittee.
Tom and I have met with Ryan, twice now, and we've had, phone conversations as well. We've been looking at his proposed new structure from a couple different vantage points, and, during our most recent discussion, we, came up with a couple suggestions that we're gonna try to hammer down in writing during our next meeting, and so we're hoping to present in November.
Item 6, any other business? All right, I just have, just two things to kind of update the board on. There has been, no work yet on the policy for the, non-lapsing account, for the Board of Ed. Just to kind of rehash that, they're gonna be able to, sweep up to 2%, into a non-lapsing account.
Policy committee is working on it, we just don't have a final.
Right.
yet to send on to.
And I did, speak with, the Board of Ed chair, and, when we get to that point, they'll get a hold of me to kind of just take a quick look. I mean, you all know what kind of our concerns were, to try to, I guess, provide the greatest level of transparency, I think, and not have any kind of negative fallout with that kind of a sweeping change in how things are done. I think we kind of thought maybe November-ish or somewhere in that range, maybe we might have a preliminary kind of conversation. So anyway, it's still in the mix, just to kind of keep everybody in the loop. I went to a borough meeting along with finance director, first selectman and second selectman on the 26th of September. They made a proposal to both the borough and the sewer department. And that proposal was for $1 million to pre-buy $1.75 million worth of buy-in tie-in fees, which they indicated was the same offer that the sewer department had made to Heritage River. But they were going to provide them with a $1.75 million hookup for $1 million. So they were looking for that same offer. The selectmen indicated that they would be using that for commercial incentives in lieu of tax abatement. They had indicated that there would be a split on those buy-in tie-in fees so that the DPU would not be losing all of their revenue, and that the selectmen indicated that they were open to working with them on trying to find a percentage that was amenable to both sides, whether it was 50-50 or 60-40 or whatever that case may be. The couple of conditions, I believe, that they put on that offer, and they had read this offer into the meeting, was that money was going to be required to be utilized for capital improvement projects. That it couldn't be used for operating costs, it had to be used for capital projects down there. And that it was also contingent upon, a forensic audit, being done. And I believe the proposal indicated it was both on sewer and electric. Didn't indicate that the forensic audit had to be completed, but it had to be in motion. They put a, no later, reply date of, I believe it was November 12th, if, memory serves me correctly. For some reason that sticks in my mind. And that's kind of all I have on that. I don't really have anything else I can fill you in on with regard to that. I haven't heard of anything happening kind of one way or another. Or do you have anything that you can add to any of that?
I haven't heard whether or not, I heard that, I think the board thinks it's a good idea, but I haven't heard that they've decided one way or another. One thing to add to what you said as far as can only be used for capital projects, it was based on the study by Moonshot and their
Right.
recommendations. So that we know they're being used for the most needed things.
So the prioritization would have to be consistent with the moonshot recommendations.
Okay,
And I watched that after you guys left.
okay,
I was watching that and there was some discussion as to where the money was gonna come from to pay for the forensic audit and why include the electric. So there was kind of some
mm,
hold up there and they were kind of,
gotcha. Yeah, I didn't end up,
right.
You know,
I
watching
know
or
you guys
anything, I
watched.
mean, that would be a great follow-up for them to have with the selectmen to kind of
Right,
clarify
but
some of
that's-
that or negotiate. Thank you, Rob.
Yep.
I guess we're gonna move on to public forum. Does anyone wish to speak? Jim?
Yes, please. Just a few comments. The film that was provided for the school department, that was film that we put over the existing lines, right, Sean? This was capital stuff we did a few years ago. I think that was. Several years ago, yes. So that was, we put film over the existing glass. The labor inflation rate, according to the Department of Labor for 2019 to 2021 was approximately 20%, so almost 7% a year. The labor current inflation rate, which I just looked up, was 2.4%. And I think any of us that are buying anything realizes that 2.4% is not a real number. And the last thing I wanted to mention was I've had long-term concern over the fire department stability. And I know that you've had this agreement now that you put together for the stipends or what. I'm involved in a number of condominium associations. Every one of them is way undercapitalized. There's very little money to do the things that are coming up, so I want to suggest that the board looks at the long-range plan for having fire departments in the town, because that is all of a sudden going to hit us, and that's going to be an extremely expensive jump in our costs. So I think that's all my notes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? Okay, then we'll move on to the final item this evening.
Make a motion when we adjourn.
Seconds?
First a second. So all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Adjourned.